All right, welcome everybody to the interview series that still has no name. My name is Shane. Thank you all for joining me, or for whoever's going to trickle in to the two or three people that are going to watch live. But I am very excited for this one today, since it is one of my dear friends, the very talented triple threat Michelle Hasso. But before we get into it, a few things. I am on the road to trying to being an affiliate on Twitch. I have got 6 more followers to reach in order to meet another one of the criteria. So if you are coming to the stream for the first time, go ahead and drop that a follow. Drop it a follow. Oh god, the cat is rubbing herself on my ankle. This is really bad timing. Okay. Another thing, just kind of a little addendum to the chat that me and Amy had, because we had a bit of a conversation in regards to Steppenwolf and their TYA series and them shutting it down. There's been more reports actually coming out recently in regards to the fact that it's not going away, but they're actually looking to revamp it and kind of find a more holistic approach to how they approach their TYA series and their educational series for young audiences. I don't know what that means yet, so I highly recommend that everyone go ahead and do a little bit of research on that. Keep in touch with what's going to be going on, because I am very curious to see what that is going to look like moving forward in regards to their programming. Because we need to continue to have this conversation with these big institutions in implementing TYA programs, because we do need to make sure that we're ushering in the next generation. Also, for anyone who's curious, I'll bring this shirt into frame. And now that I've brought this shirt into frame, I'm sure you're going to ask, Shane, where did you get that really cool watermelon Palestinian shirt? I got it from an organization based in Chicago called Wear the Peace. Now, they are an organization that's looking to amplify everything that's happening in Gaza right now. And all the proceeds from all of their merchandise sales go towards aid for the Palestinian people. So I highly recommend buying some gear from them to, make your support for the Palestinian people much more visible, and also, like, in some small way, make any sort of small material difference on what's happening in Gaza. And I'm also highly recommending for anyone who wants to keep up with particular news sources that are going to be covering this in a very in-depth and nuanced way, and making sure that we're getting perspectives from the Palestinian people. Mehdi Hassan, formerly from MSNBC, who did get ousted from MSNBC, probably in large part to his pro-Palestinian slant, started his own organization called Zeteo. So Zeteo is an independent news organization, and they are working their way towards their official launch very soon. Follow their newsletter, follow them on YouTube. I do believe that they have some Patreons and some other things that you can pay for. So please do give that a follow. Also, vote with your dollars. We need independent journalism here, especially at a time where journalism is getting crushed by private equity. Support independent journalism. All right, now that we have got that out of the way, let us get to the fun part. So here is the bio for one Michelle Hasso. One thing also before I get into it, if you do have a question for Michelle, please do leave it in the chat. And near the end of the interview, if there are any questions from the 2 or 3 of you watching, we'll go ahead and ask Michelle and get her thoughts and opinions. Okay, let's jump in. Michelle Hasso is an award-honored performer with credits encompassing opera, cabaret, theater, television, commercial, and voiceover. Within her repertoire of over 25 leading and supporting stage roles, highlights include a Broadway national tour of The King's Speech, Elizaveta Grushinskaya for The Grand Hotel, a Jeff Award-winning role, The Beggar Woman, Sweeney Todd, Bay Area Theater Critics Circle Award recipient, The Witch in Into the Woods, and the title role in Puccini's Suor Angelica. She has also appeared on Chicago PD and on The Chi. Michelle recently returned to her native Los Angeles after several years in Chicago and Bay Area markets. In Los Angeles, she is managed by Hendrickson Talent Management and is repped by Coast to Coast Talent for commercial and big mouth talent in Chicago for legit theater. Up next, Michelle is delighted to make her debut with the Will Gear Theatricum Botanicum for their 50th repertory season in The Winter's Tale and in Tartuffe Born Again. Let us welcome the one and only Michelle Jasso! I need a soundboard.
Regular human
Yes,
conversation.
for a regular human conversation.
Yes,
All
with
right.
my moments drink.
If none of you know, that is a What We Do in the Shadows reference. You haven't watched it. What is wrong with you?
Oh, I love it so much. I just love it so much. I
Oh
can't
my
wait
god.
for the next season.
Oh my god. Yes. I feel like there was a moment in time where I felt like all of our voice memos together was just a bunch of us doing Matt Berry bullshit.
Uh-huh. hmm Yeah, absolutely. It's just like, impersonating various characters and oh,
Oh my god.
uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
Father!
Oh, no! Yeah. Anyway.
All right. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm kind of a little up to my ears right now, but it's all good things. And yeah, I'm super excited to be, buried in Scansion and, um, kind of up to my ears in Winter's Tale, which is really exciting. So yeah, I have my third coaching with my beloved Susan Hart tomorrow morning.
Lovely.
So yeah, I'm super excited. We start rehearsal on Sunday.
Yeah.
So
The one thing that I thought about when I was like going over your bio was I I don't think you've done Shakespeare since I've known you, which to
I
me I find fucking wild.
it's wild. It's really wild. Yeah, I've regularly auditioned for Shakespeare. I've been called
Mm-hmm.
back for Shakespeare many times.
Yes.
But it's just not something that I've ever booked. And it's always been kind of,
Mm-hmm.
well, there was a while there where it was pretty like hardcore music theater. And I was
Yeah.
just sort of like looped into one musical after another for a few years there.
Mm-hmm.
So there was certainly some time when I wasn't auditioning for any Shakespeare, but lately here in LA, I've just been really missing Shakespeare
Yeah.
tremendously. And when I was in Chicago, I took a lot of classes with Susan and Jeffrey,
Mm-hmm.
RIP. Um, and so, I worked on a lot of great material with them and did their like one show focus and all that kind of stuff and dove deeper into the literature. But
Yeah.
in terms of actual Shakespeare performance, no. I haven't done it in years and years and years. And actually, I was thinking about this today, not since I've been a union actor.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah,
So,
it's been crazy because I think we've personally read Shakespeare together, I think on a
mhm,
couple of occasions. And yeah,
mhm.
like you've worked at Chicago Shakespeare twice. And
Twice,
it wasn't for Shakespeare.
not for
It
Shakespeare
wasn't.
though. Totally,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
also it's just like doing Tartuffe. I mean, like that comedy wise, that is right up your alley. Right
Oh,
up
I'm
your
so
alley.
excited for that one. I'm so excited. And that's like it's Tartuffe Born Again. Are you familiar with this like adaptation?
Yeah, no, I've never heard of that. Like, is this supposed to be like a
So,
sequel?
So no, no, no. It's so this woman, Freya Thomas, I think the adaptation is from like 99 or something like that. It's not new, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything about it. So she took translated the Molière and
Mm-hmm.
put it into modern verse in Louisiana. So it's based in 1980s Louisiana. So
Oh
how fun is
my
that? But it's
God.
in verse. So I'm playing Elmira, but they call her Elmire,
That is so crazy.
which is amazing. So other than that, it is the
Mm-hmm.
Moliere. Like the story is like the exact story. It's just, a different setting, and they she has rewritten, so it's
Mhm.
in verse, but it's in Louisianan verse. So that's super, super fun. So yeah, I'm really excited. And this is for the next 6 months
Holy
because
shit.
Winter's Tale, yeah.
This
So
is a
Winter's
6-month
Tale,
contract? Wow.
basically between the two shows,
Wow.
yes, because they run basically a 6 month repertory because it's like California summer repertory, you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like it's 5 months. So the rep starts on June
Mhm.
1st with Winter's Tale, and then that runs through September, and then Tartuffe runs all in rep, right? And
Mhm.
then Tartuffe begins in July and runs through October. So there will be overlap, and there will be days too
Mhm.
in which I will be doing two different shows in one day.
I fucking love that. I fucking
And
love
I
that.
and I have, I mean, other than just like little, just like because I really
Mhm.
never did repertory theater.
It's a
That
kind of a relic.
that it's I passed that one
Yeah.
by, like I never did it. So the most I've ever done is like, new works festivals or like that kind of thing. Like I
Yeah.
did that Wyoming Theater Festival or whatever, where it was a little bit of a rep sort of a situation, but that was just normally little things,
Yeah.
or it was just like but never two full shows in one day, one of them being Shakespeare, one of them being The Tale.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well, and
holy
also,
shit.
because here's the challenge I have with Cymbeline too, because it's like Winter's Tale was written around the same time. That's
They're both
late
later,
verse. That's
late,
messy verse.
late.
Messy verse. Where it's like the
Hmm.
midline shifts every line. It's happening. Like your mind is always just pinging back and forth.
Hmm. Hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
Yep, 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 yep,
I
yep.
mean that's
But
just
because it's, among his later works, it's some of the most beautiful language,
oh yeah.
just some of the most beautiful, beautiful language. So I'm really excited for that.
Oh yeah.
Those speeches of Hermione's. And what a
Fantastic.
badass Paulina is. Oh my
Yes.
God. Paulina is a badass. I adore
Yes.
her. Oh, I just love her so much. So it's been a joy so far, and can't wait to get rehearsals started.
I'm so excited this is finally happening because it's just like
I
I know
know.
that like there is just so much that especially like right now I feel like you're in like a peak moment to like play a lot of very titular roles like within Shakespeare. Like I feel like you're in
So
that moment right now.
yes, yes, I agree. And one thing also about the second show in their repertory is Midsummer.
Hmm.
And Titania was one of the roles that they called me back for. So I was a little bit heartbroken
Oh
to
shit.
not put Titania,
Oh my
but
god.
it's okay. It's okay. The nice thing about this company is they do Midsummer every year,
Really?
every single year. And then the rest of everything else they
Hmm.
recycle and like do other things and do other shakes and not shakes. But they do Midsummer every single year.
Hmm.
So I'll have another shot at her.
Okay.
So
All right. Well, that's good. That's exciting. All right. So, I want to before I start like dissecting your resume a little bit here, something I wanted to bring up was kind of when it wasn't when I was first introduced to you, it was when I first saw you. So I don't know if you know this story. The first thing I ever saw you in was the Wiley West show, Stewart show, where
oh, the Juno and Victoria, the Hera show.
mm-hmm, yeah, when you played
Um,
Hera. And
mm-hmm.
one of the main reasons why I remember that show was because I think the text really surprised me because of how I think just like how sexual a lot of the language was, and also just like kind of
Mm,
in a sense of like, you know, I don't think I've seen a show in that kind of setting with that much cussing and stuff like that. So like the script was also very cutting, very witty. But I just remember watching you there and the way that you were holding space, the way that like cuz you were playing a character that like knew everybody's secrets. And so there was something about the way that like you were looking out into the horizon as like everyone wanted to give you the tea, but you're just like it's like I know, I know, I know, I know. And there was something about the way you were taking everything in and the way that like you were holding everyone's focus. I just
Mm.
remember when the curtain like went down on that one. I was like, who the fuck is that? Who
Oh,
the
oh, that's
fuck?
very kind.
Yeah, yeah, no, like, and I was asked because I went with Carl, and I was like, Carl, who the fuck was that? It's like, oh, you don't know Michelle, and I'm like, no, I want to.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very
Yeah,
kind. Stuart Purcell,
yeah.
playwright of Juno and Victoria,
Mm-hmm.
is working on a sequel.
Oh,
And
I didn't know that.
he recently, well, I guess it would be the third. He did write a second chapter that I went and did a
Mm-hmm.
reading of. It didn't go anywhere, it didn't get produced or anything. So I guess this would be number three, or I'm actually not sure if this
Mm-hmm.
is if he intends to do like a triptych of this or if this is a rewrite of
Mm-hmm.
the sequel. I'm honestly not sure. But
Mm-hmm.
he reached out and he's just like, I'm working on this, just so you know. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Okay,
Okay.
good to know."
I'm very curious. I'm very
Yeah, me
curious.
too. Me too. I love that script.
Yeah.
I just really loved that script. It was just such a great idea, setting that story, that Greek mythological story in Victorian England and
Oh,
having
yes.
like Hera and Zeus and all of these characters be aristocracy and like
Yeah.
that was their power. That was really cool. It was also very cool. It was all about the women, mostly
Yes.
about the women,
You never see Zeus.
and that you never see Zeus.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Yeah.
spoken of, but you never see him.
Yeah. It's I'm really fascinated by that because I feel like Hera gets lost quite a
Hmm.
bit in it just because it's kind of like she's the bitter victim blamey wife in the way that like
Right.
she's written.
Hmm.
But there really is a lot more opportunity I think to kind of like explore what that inner life is to kind of mean like what does it mean to carry on like any sort of life with any kind of dignity when the way that everyone acts around you kind of almost strips you of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it it's it's a life of precariousness
Hmm.
in to some degree.
Sure.
Especially in
Yeah.
that Victorian setting where
Hmm.
like everything is about the stories that people are telling in court, the stories that people are telling on the street. What kind of like credibility are they or are they not giving you?
Right. Right. For sure.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow. I never knew that. That's amazing.
Mhm.
What was the first thing that we did a reading together the first time, right?
Yes. That was what was interesting. It was like it wasn't too long afterwards that we did the Olympians.
Right.
And I
Right, because
yeah.
Juno was originally an Olympians
Mhm.
reading. So you didn't see that original reading, you saw the full
I
production.
saw the full production.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, cuz I was
yeah.
in the middle of I was in the middle of 12th night, the theater in the woods.
All right, you're in the mood.
Yeah, so that's how I met Nick and that whole like indie crew.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
But yes,
Right.
so like I just remember seeing your name on the cast list and I went, fuck, she's a fucking titan. Here we go. Cause like I like saw
Oh,
that you were like playing my wife in that and I was just like and then I just remember when we met, like I felt it instantly. I'm like, oh, we're gonna be fast friends. Like I felt like it was
yeah.
like it felt fast.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. It was
Yeah.
definitely an instant
Hmm.
kinship, for
Oh yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is that's
Yeah.
been like I think that's been like over a decade of like friendship since.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
That sounds about right, at
Hmm.
least.
Yeah. Good lord.
Yeah.
Good lord. The time. Okay. But to start it from the top, because there's I think there's probably is some stuff about your come up that I probably don't know. How did you
Mhm.
first start getting into theater? Let's go to the genesis of the Michelle live performer journey.
So it's interesting. It, everything that I did was like, you know, singing into my hairbrush in the mirror and like singing for family and friends and whoever would listen. I never did theater camp. I was never in plays as a kid or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. My first stage production ever, I turned 18 during the rehearsal process. I
Mm-hmm.
totally remember very vividly because they sang me happy birthday during a rehearsal. It was for Man of La Mancha.
Hmm.
And I played Antonia, Don Quixote's niece. And I got involved in that show in the first place because my friend Misty Vincent, who's still a friend,
Mm-hmm.
she and her husband David were really, really, really into musical theater. And they had gotten involved with this Ukaipa Heartland Players, this community group in Ukaipa, and they dragged me kicking and screaming to this audition. Now, I wasn't completely oblivious to musical
Yeah.
theater because my dear late
Mm-hmm.
uncle, Ronnie, took me to see Sweeney Todd when I was 9 years old, which, by the
Mm-hmm.
way, so funny. Are you or have you watched the Schmigadoon, Schmicago? Like, are you privy to this whole
I've only
show?
seen the pilot of Schmigadoon. I haven't seen the whole thing.
So it's hilarious, but the first episode of the second season, which is Schmicago, um, it is so brilliant, like what they've done with this show. It is so,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm totally like late to the game on watching it, but it is so funny. In the first episode of season two, the one of the lead characters says, "Oh yeah, I've never really liked, this era of music theater since my dad took me to see Sweeney Todd at the age of 8." And then it flashes back to her as a little girl with blood splashing on her face and she screams bloody murder. And I'm like, that's really funny because I had almost that exact same experience, but I went, wow, this is so cool. I had the exact opposite reaction. I was like, yeah, get blood all over me. So, but I didn't know. So I knew it was like this really cool thing that I was like really that I really loved Sweeney Todd, but
Mhm.
I didn't really make the connection since that was my only experience with musical theater. I didn't really understand that that was musical theater and that that was a genre of something.
Mhm.
I thought, because again, I did not grow up with theater at all. No one
Mhm.
in my family like, took me to theater or encouraged me to be in shows or anything of that nature.
Mhm.
I think I played like the Virgin Mary in a school show when I was like 6 and just stood there going, what am
Yeah.
I supposed to do? Like holding
Mhm.
this like baby doll. I didn't have any really understanding. So it
Mhm.
wasn't until considerably later and meeting and befriending this couple, Misty and David, who
Mhm.
were super into like all music theater, but especially Phantom of the Opera. And they would put
Mhm.
on these little like silly Phantom of the Opera like concerts in their home.
Mhm.
It wasn't really until then that I understood, oh, I see. So music theater is
Yeah.
like this whole genre, and there
Yeah.
are multiple different shows. Oh, okay, I get
Mhm.
it. So they're like, okay, so they're doing the show Man of La Mancha. It's also an awesome
Mhm.
show, and you should totally come and audition. And they dragged me kicking and screaming, and I literally sang "Happy Birthday to You" in the key of F major. That was my audition song, and they cast me as Antonia, and my whole world opened up. It was just like this totally revelatory experience, and everyone was so kind, and I had such a great time. And
Mhm.
I befriended the very talented actor who played Aldonza slash Dulcinea,
Mhm.
and she connected me with her voice teacher.
Mhm.
And the rest, as they say, is history. So I started taking voice lessons, and
Mhm.
at first we were doing singing various music theater songs, and like he had me singing like Disney stuff, like he had me singing like Pocahontas and and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and Jasmine because I was just dark, right? So it so
Of course.
he's like, yeah, you could be Jasmine, you could be
Yes.
Pocahontas. You're like, great. I'm neither of
Yeah.
those things, but okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Yes, here's the
So
random brown girl songs.
all the random brown girl songs, exactly. So, So I was singing all that, and then as is often the case when one studies voice, eventually this teacher put a classical piece in front of me, and I didn't want anything to do with it. And he's like, "Here, there's this singer that I think that you kind of sound a little like her, and I you should listen to her. And here's an album of her singing a lot of these songs that we're looking at right now. It's like
Mm-hmm.
there's this standard like 24 Italian songs and arias that's
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, classical vocal training 101 kind of like level material, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Cecilia Bartoli, who is still a very beloved singer of everyone's. She's still singing her face off. Um, it made this album of a lot of these early Italian art songs,
Mm-hmm.
and he hands me this album, and he's like, "You should listen to it." And I'm like, "All right." I took it home and I listened to it, and I hated it. I hated it. I wanted nothing to do with it. I hated the sound of her voice. I'm just like, I don't ever want to bet that.
And you're like,
Don't
you said this is
anything.
me?
Like you said, this sounds like me. I'm offended, right? I was just like so like put off by it. And then I listened to it again
Mm-hmm.
and again and again and again and again. And
Mm-hmm.
then I slowly but surely I started to fall in love with it.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, Cecilia Bartoli is one of my favorite singers. And
That's
so
beautiful.
that started me down the opera road. Right. So then,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So I did a musical, befriended the lead, connected me with her voice teacher. He put Cecilia Bartoli in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
and I was forever changed.
Yeah.
That's the way that story goes. So yeah, so I went to school initially for music and for classical voice and
Mm-hmm.
for opera.
Yeah. So that part I knew about you, but like in terms of like listening to what was it, Bartoli? What made you
Bartoli. Mhm.
what made you stick it out? Like if you hated it so much, why'd you stick it out and keep going? What
I
inspired it?
just I hated it, and then I don't know. I just decided to pick it up again. I don't know. Maybe I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
well, maybe there's something that I need to learn here or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so because that initial reaction was a very knee jerk, like visceral reaction.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, well, my teacher, who I love and respect, and who I think, is doing wonders for my
Mm-hmm.
voice, hears something about this singer that he hears in me. So maybe I
Mm-hmm.
just need to listen again.
Yeah.
And so I did.
Okay.
And I still hated it. And then I just kept going back. I just kept going back. And it was like,
Yeah.
it wasn't until like probably the 20th time
Mm-hmm.
that I listened to it that I was like, oh, okay, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to him and I was just like, all right, well, what about this song? And what about this song? And can we look at this song? And what about this song? And tell me more about this composer. And, it just sort of, that's where it all started.
Mm-hmm.
And so then there I was, 18, 19 years old, however old. And I'm like, I'm going to be an opera singer. And I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea what that awful pursuit is like.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's insane how rigorous it is. Like just to even have a shot. Just to even have a shot, like the amount of rigor it takes to like really pursue that. But like when
Mm.
you were getting your education in that, like where'd you go to school for it?
So I went to school, and I went to many, many, many different schools, but I
Mm-hmm.
went to the place I stuck it out the longest was Santa Rosa Junior College in Santa Rosa, California. They have a fantastic music program there, like a
Mm-hmm.
really, really, really excellent music program.
Yeah.
So I went there, and from there I transferred to the University of Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I did that's where I completed my undergraduate. And then I went to Portland State University, which had again,
Mm-hmm.
for the teacher. I went because there was a really, really excellent teacher, Ruth Dobson, who's still there, still kicking.
Mm-hmm.
And she had this really amazing summer opera
Yeah.
center that she ran out of PSU. So she had this fantastic reputation, and I distinctly remember I like literally
Mm-hmm.
went and without an appointment, went and knocked on Ruth Dobson's door. I literally just like went to Portland State one day and I just went to the Department of Music and I was just like, where's Ruth Dobson's office? And literally I just went and knocked on her door and she was done for the day. And I just went, I was like, hi. So I was just kind of hoping that maybe I could sing for you. And she's like, who are you? Like, yeah, I'm Michelle Hasso. I heard great things about you and your
Mm,
program and da da da. And she's like, well, like my studio is full. I can't I can't take anybody else right now. And I don't remember what I said to her. I really don't. I don't know if I said like I probably said something like, I drove a few hours to see you today, and I would really just love to sing something for you. And if you hear me and you still don't want to take me, that's okay. Like,
mm,
but could you just hear me sing half an aria for you?
mm.
And she's like, fine. I'm like, I can sing it a cappella. And she's like, no, I play. She's like, no, I play. She like held out her hand, like,
What key are you singing?
give me your music. And so I set it down for her and I sang her half of Una Voce Poco Fa from Barbara and Seville,
Hmm.
Barbara of Seville. And she was like, okay,
I saw
great,
that
I'll
with
take you.
you. I remember that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah. And she's like, all right, great. I really don't have any room for you, but I'll take you. I was like,
Man,
okay.
I have you always been this bold? Because that's something that
Yes.
I've always seen from you is like you've never been like afraid to like shoot your shot in that way.
I've been like that since I was a small child. My mother has many stories, many stories. Like, for example, one of my
Hmm.
favorites. She has many really hilarious stories, but one that just makes me laugh every single time is when I was a little girl and I would get dressed up for some occasion, like
Hmm.
Easter, my birthday, whatever. People would compliment me and tell me how pretty I looked. And for the longest time, my response was, I know. And then one day, my mother said to me, Michelle, honey, you're supposed to say thank you. And I just went, why? I'm they're telling the truth, and I am telling the truth.
I'm sorry, it's just facts.
It's
It's
just
just
that.
facts. You are an Aries.
I'm such an Aries. I was like 6. Okay. Like, I mean, literally, I was just like, I know. I know. Thank you.
Oh my god.
So, yeah. So,
That's like
yes, I've always been this way.
duh, like like
Um,
you're just going full like Californians, like yeah, no,
I
yeah,
know.
no.
Okay. I
Yeah,
know. It's just so incredibly
I look
obnoxious.
at
But
myself
yes.
every day and I know.
Your viewers are going to be like, who the fuck is this bitch? Oh my God. I hope I can cuss. I hope that's all right.
I don't give a fuck.
Um,
I'm not
okay,
monetized.
great, great, wonderful, wonderful, fantastic. Yeah, nobody's sponsoring this, right? Fuck
Yeah.
shit.
But if you want to
Yeah.
sponsor it, we could add some
But if
content moderation.
yes, we could. We
Yes,
absolutely
yes, yes,
could.
we
A
could.
moment, would Moment
Yeah,
Adaptogen Drinks
yes,
like to sponsor
adaptogen
this?
mushroom water.
Yes, it's mushroom water. It's
Yeah,
very healthy,
yes.
supposedly.
Come get your
That's
poopy plushies at the Shane Rhodes actor interview.
I want a poopy plushie. Where's my poopy plushie?
I don't know. I'm not kidding. Maggie got this for me at a gas station on a road trip to Minnesota.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
You know what? She loves you. She really, really loves you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And she's about to like move in with the partner soon, and so it's just like, yeah, new chapter's
Oh,
coming.
how long have you two been living together? Close to 10 years, right?
When the lease ends, 10 years. 10 years.
Oh, Shane.
Yeah.
Are you gonna be okay?
I think I'll be okay.
Yeah. Are you going to get a
Yeah.
new roommate? Are you going to keep that same apartment and have someone else move in, or what's
Uh,
your plan?
you know, there was some plans, and then a life update happened that kind of dampened those plans. I'll tell you off stream, but
Okay. Okay. All right.
but you know, I don't
Heard.
know yet. I don't know yet. Like I think
Heard.
mostly the plan is to stay here because you know I got a good deal on the rent, and
It's such a great
but you know,
apartment.
yeah, it is, and I think the location's perfect. It's
The
perfect.
location
Yeah,
cannot be beat.
yeah, yeah. Part of me is wondering if I should
It's
get a
amazing.
condo. I'm not really sure. So you know,
Mm,
we'll figure it out. We'll figure. I got 5 6 months. I got time.
you got
So
a little bit of time.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna figure it out from there. But yeah, the story I remember is I remember you told me that your journey to San Francisco was
Mm.
actually because of opera, right?
Yes. Yes.
Can we dive into that a little bit more?
Sure, sure. So I went to so I didn't actually completely finish this. My very, very last year of I basically went through
Hmm.
almost the entire master's program at Portland State University,
Yes, 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 yes,
and,
yes.
and then I finished my, what I needed to finish at the San Francisco Conservatory. I don't
Hmm.
like to say that I went there because I didn't go there for my full training, but basically
Hmm.
I was there for like kind of 8 months or something like that.
Hmm.
But that was really what brought me up there. And then I just, I stuck around and I
Hmm.
liked it, and I met some really wonderful singer colleagues. But yeah, that's what brought me to San Francisco, was opera
Hmm.
and the pursuit of opera. And so it was really, I don't know why. I mean, I guess really just because the opera world is so it's awful. It's just really awful. And it's worse for women,
Hmm.
and it's the very worst for sopranos, because most opera singers are sopranos.
Yeah.
And there are the least number of roles for sopranos. If you take like all of the opera roles that there are, the majority
Hmm.
of them are for men. And so it's similar to Shakespeare in that way, to be honest. There are
Yeah.
far, far,
Hmm.
far more male roles than female roles.
Hmm.
So to get the competition for those who, just like the Shakespeare queens, right? The competition for those Shakespeare queens, it's a similar kind of metric, right? The competition for soprano roles in opera is absolutely brutal. And and like what ends up happening is that you're singing with tenors who are just kind of like okay. Like they're not
Hmm.
great, but they're tenors, so they
Yeah.
work. And meanwhile, every single sound that is uttered from your throat has to be perfect, like absolute perfect.
Jesus.
And so it's really, really brutal, very cutthroat. And man, to add insult to injury, you think shit's bad in theater, and like we have a long way to go in terms of like representation and in terms of just like working
Restructuring how we do it. Yeah. Hmm.
conditions.
Yeah.
And in opera, we still have fucking Anna Netrebko, who refuses to stop singing Aida in blackface. And she is still getting hired. The Metropolitan Opera in New
What?
York finally, finally stopped hiring her to sing Aida. But she still regularly, you can look it up, Anna Netrebko, she still sings Aida in blackface in Europe.
People are paying for that shit?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, in addition to how like pretty much impossible it is I know, dude, believe me, it is just like
Ah!
I cannot, I can't, I can't deal with it.
I hate it. I hate it. Also, outside of the rampant misogyny and the racism, but like something I never really see when like people talk about opera is like what is the development happening with new work? Because I don't feel
Mm.
like it exists that much in like on an institutional level.
So uh here's the thing. There is new work happening.
Yeah.
And much like it is in theater, there are programs, certain like new works programs and that kind of thing, and festivals and la la la. There is,
Yeah.
there is a movement for that in opera. However, um, it is often really, really bad. And
Mm.
it's alarming how bad it is. Check this out. I'm going on record with this because I don't care. Come at me. I was so incredibly excited to see a new opera called Frida and Diego that was about Frida Kahlo and Diego
Oh
Rivera
fuck
with
yeah.
a book by Nilo Cruz,
What?
composed by a female Mexicana composer with a Mexicana conductor leading the orchestra. Shane, I was so fucking excited. I was so excited. We got all dressed up, and there were all these That was the best part. The best part was showing up to the Dorothy Chandler, going
Yeah.
up the steps to LA Opera and seeing all these brown, beautiful faces
Yeah.
everywhere. Everybody all dressed up and everything, and dressed like Frida, and like they had these beautiful like ofrenda photo op
Hmm.
setups everywhere and everything. It was really cool. This whole step and repeat thing. It was really, 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 really cool. The
Hmm.
opera was so bad. It was
Fuck.
atrociously, atrociously bad. And I just don't understand. And I can't, I don't believe that like that Nilo Cruz like that can't possibly be like how he wanted that to go down, because the
Man.
story was actually not bad, but the execution was horrible. And like they just barely talked about the lives of these incredible iconic figures, and you know just barely scratched the surface of who they were. And there was this whole number about what a philanderer Diego was that was like all just super comedic dumb, and like there was a whole number about him being fat. It was so it was
Why?
just it was literally like it, it was literally like somebody just looked up Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo and like took the first three bullet points off of Wiki and decided to like try to
Yeah.
make a production out of it.
Yeah.
It was
Artist,
like
cheater, communist. Blah. Yeah.
and no communism. There was no communism.
That's a huge part of his personality. That's really big.
Oh, yeah. And there was this whole number about him like painting a mural and he didn't know what to paint. And that made me angry because anybody who knows anything whatsoever, I don't even feel like I know that much about Diego Rivera. I know more about Frida. But what I do know about Diego Rivera is that
Mhm.
he always planned out his murals. He knew exactly what he was going to paint before he got to the damn spot where his mural was going to be. He
Mhm.
never went and just like figured shit out on the fly. That didn't happen. So
Mhm.
it's just like a completely fabricated, like you have no idea who this person is. Anyway, I could go on. I won't. But this is all to say there is new opera happening, and
Mhm.
it's often garbage. And I can't figure out why this needs to be the case.
Oh my
Like there are
god.
so many damn fabulous, talented people in the world. And like this particular story had every opportunity to be something outstanding. And it was so bad as to be tragic. So I don't really know. I mean, that is everything that we have talked about in one form or another is the reason I have turned my back on opera.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it just because I even see stories about like your old colleague Bethany because I'm still friends with her on Facebook and like some of the stories she shares and it's just like I don't understand how that's sustainable for anybody. Like
It's
it's just
not.
it's absolutely not,
It's not.
and it's not encouraging anyone to really want to engage with the art form with a very
Mm.
beautiful art form,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is a shame.
Hmm.
Um, so before we transition away from the classical theater realm, there's something that I was curious about was someone that you talked to a lot with me about is Kurt Weill. And so
Yes.
I'm curious for you, what is it about Kurt Weill that just like really speaks to like your heart and soul?
Oh gosh. It's so funny. I have a picture of him right
Mm,
there. I'm looking at it
mm,
right now. And it's so funny that you bring this up now because um, also for my birthday weekend, my dear friend Aaron Benham, you met Aaron, right? My
yes,
pianist friend. Yes,
yes,
yes, yes. Yeah, he was at the wedding too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You know Aaron. He and I did a Kurt Weill cabaret,
yeah, Davenport,
right?
yeah,
Yes, at Davenport's,
mm-hmm,
exactly. And Berlin im Licht.
mm-hmm.
And we have decided that we are going to reprise it out here in
Hell
LA.
yeah,
So yes, I love Kurt Weill very much. And so Kurt Weill is a fascinating figure for a lot of reasons. He was essentially chased out of Germany by the Gestapo. Okay, I mean, like
yeah.
he was a communist,
Mm-hmm.
and he I like communists. Um,
Umar.
but yeah, so he came to this country, and and the story between he and his wife, twice twice wife, Lottie
Mhm.
Lenya, is fascinating because they did work together with Brecht, of course,
Oh.
in Germany. Oh yeah, Kurt Weill and Bertolt Brecht were great friends and colleagues until they weren't. They had a very bad falling
Mm.
out. But Three Penny Opera is a collaboration between the two of them. Happy End is a collaboration between the two of them. They did several shows together.
Mhm.
Um, but Three Penny Opera being the most famous. But anyway,
Yeah.
so Ladi Lanya and Kurt Weill were together and married in Germany, split up. Both essentially ran for their lives from Germany and re-met at a party in the States in New York,
Mhm.
and which is just this fabulous story, and then rekindled their relationship. And many of the songs that he wrote, because she was a fantastic cabaret artist, so
Mhm.
many of the cabaret songs that he wrote were for her.
Okay.
Um, it so happens that he worked with a lot of different poets that I really love, and writers, and so his songs tend to be very gritty, tend to be very political, and also because of the fact that his wife Lottie Lenya was a former prostitute, um,
Hmm.
he wrote a lot of songs of the woman's perspective. And his wife told him many, many very brutally honest stories about her time as a sex worker, the good, the
Fuck.
bad, the ugly, the hilarious,
Yeah.
and so he wrote songs about all of them.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of those songs in that cabaret that I did, actually. So yeah, I just love that he was very, very fearless and
Mhm.
brilliant. And oh, he also experimented with many, many different musical styles. So
Mhm.
he was a student of Berg. He was an impressionist like student in
Mhm.
Germany, and wrote very avant-garde kind of music, and then came here to the United States. And there's this great story about him and Lottie Lenya attending the final dress rehearsal of Porgy and Bess.
Oh.
And afterward, after the curtain comes down or whatever, he turns to Lottie and says, "Okay, American opera does exist, and I'm going to write it.
Mm.
And so then his focus turned to writing, opera. His operas were never really opera, but um, my opera debut with Portland Opera was in Kurt Weill's Street Scene.
Mm.
So, so yeah, so that's another aspect of him. He was there in my early career, and he's always I I could sing Kurt Weill's music for the rest of my life. I
Yeah.
mean, for one thing, he was so unbelievably prolific.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I have volumes and volumes and volumes of Kurt Weill songs that, like, some of them you hear again and again, and some of them you never hear. So that's what Aaron and I want to do
Yeah.
is dive deeper into the stuff that doesn't see the light of day that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, so content both in musical terms um, and in terms of lyrics and uh, essence of what's being communicated through his music. And then he seemed to really like to write for my voice because a lot of times I'll whip open a song and the original key that I like to sing things in the original key. That's
Hmm.
something that's a carryover from my
Yeah.
opera days. I do believe that composers write in certain keys for a reason.
Yeah.
Certain keys have certain personalities, and I believe in maintaining the integrity of that.
Hmm.
And so I'm not one to transpose much. I
Hmm.
try to avoid it whenever possible. I prefer to sing things in the key that the composer intended. And
Hmm.
so I whip open a volume of Kurt Weill, and most of it is like in this perfect spot in my voice.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why, so the reasons are many, but yeah, I really, really,
Yeah.
I will sing Kurt Weill for the rest of my life for sure.
Yeah. So, a question though, in changing the keys for songs, in regards to like how that applies to like music theater, especially now that we're having much more of a conversation, especially about music theater being a little bit behind too in terms of just like gender equity and things of that sort.
Oh, sure.
So then, what are your
Mhm.
thoughts then when it comes to like, let's say we want to reimagine something that provides a little bit more gender equity in terms of music theater?
Oh, well, I mean, that's a different that's a different subject, and
Hmm.
I do feel that anything that we can do to make things more gender equitable in the arts, we should be doing.
Hmm.
You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
That's a different situation. If we're talking
Hmm.
about somebody who's going through or has been through some kind of
Hmm.
gender transition, and therefore the hormones have affected the way that they can, what range they can sing in, and yet we still expect you to sing these songs in these original keys. Like, come on,
Yeah.
like that's a different story as far
Hmm.
as I'm concerned.
Hmm.
I am talking about people who change keys of stuff like just because it sounds better in their voice, just
Yeah.
comfort wise or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's a little high for me. It's a little more comfy here, or
Okay.
vice versa.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like for like vanity purposes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The
Not for ability.
story. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And then also it's just different in classical, in more classical structures,
Hmm.
because there tends to be more of a relationship between the with when something is composed for orchestra as opposed to for just piano or whatever. There's a different relationship musically in terms of what's happening
Hmm.
in the relationship between harmony and melody. So I find that when I'm talking about composers, I'm talking about real composers.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair.
No, I know that is probably going to piss people off, but
That's fine.
yeah, that's a holdover from my opera days too. I'm
Uh,
a little bit of a
I mean,
snob.
opera and music theater are both not my world, so I I don't
Yeah,
care at
yeah,
all.
yeah, and it's just like
Yeah.
and it's less important, I feel, in in music theater, like how the keys, because it's not for things like opera or standalone art song or something like that, it's it's about the music.
Okay.
Whereas with music theater, sure, yes, the music is important, but it is not, most music theater is not what we call through composed. Like Sweeney Todd is an example of a through composed musical. There's music all the
Mm,
way through, even if it's just like underscored dialogue,
mhm.
right? But in
Hamilton,
music
something like that.
theater,
Yeah.
sure. But
Yeah.
in music
Mhm.
theater where it's like song, scene,
Yeah.
etc., and there's no harmonic relationship between the songs,
Mhm.
then it matters less.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah.
Um, so one thing that I am curious about is how opera has informed your work ethic for theater. Because something that I remember
Mm.
was I saw your Sworn Angelica like years and years ago. I don't know if you
Oh, you
remember. I don't know if you remember that.
did. Yeah.
But like something that I remember was like after the show, like you recorded your performance so you could listen to it to
Mm.
kind of like see like hearing things back. And like for me, I was kind of like, oh, what the fuck? Cause like um I think for me, it takes such a lack of ego and also a tremendous amount of confidence. I think just to like listen to it and just examine literally everything just on a technical level and just go, Like you're literally putting all of that aside just to study it and to kind of like understand, like, just to make sure that you're being precise with what you're doing. So I'm kind of curious in terms of just like what transferred in terms of like the work ethic that goes from opera going into music theater and even just regular theater.
Yes, great question. One of the things for sure is that I am almost always completely off book for the first rehearsal, because that is what is expected of opera.
Mm,
And so, so that was one of the big things, that a big transition for me when I would show up to my first day of rehearsal for a music theater piece, and we're spending the first week of rehearsals with the music director just plunking
mm,
out notes.
yeah.
And I'm like, because that you don't do that in opera. You
Mm,
don't do that. You get cast in the role, you learn that fucking role on your own. And you show up
yeah.
with your, not only with your notes known, but oftentimes without even a book in your hand, other than to just take
Hmm.
blocking notes,
Hmm.
like your shit by the time, because there's no time, there's no time. It's not a 4, 5, 6 week rehearsal process. You're putting something together in 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Jesus.
yeah. 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 So yeah, so that's one thing, is that
Hmm.
the expectation is different,
Hmm.
in terms of how you are expected to show up to day one,
Hmm.
and so I can't do it. I can't not show up with my shit learned,
Hmm.
which often means that I'm very frustrated the first week of rehearsals. And so I just kind of like sit there, and I'm just kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Because now it's just
so
like,
do what you
here,
do.
let's vibe and do table work.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, great. All right. Just pay work. Great. Cool. Great. Great. I love table
Yeah.
work. Like, I
Yeah.
love table work, but
Hmm.
like sitting around plunking out notes, like
Hmm.
sitting, like everybody's sitting around while 2 or 3 people have their notes plunked out for them.
Hmm.
It's just like, fucking shoot me, like that kind of thing drives me to drink, man. It is just, I can't. But anyway, so there's that. That's kind of
Hmm.
crazy. And then I still record myself.
Hmm.
I record myself for theater. I record myself for stuff that has nothing to do with singing, or nothing
Hmm.
to do with, I record myself all the time.
Hmm.
I just took a really wonderful scene study class with this incredible actor, director, writer guy. His name is John Heinman. He's so fantastic.
Hmm.
And he's been in movies you've seen. Like, he's been around for a
Okay.
while. and he does this magnificent scene study, and he assigned me A Doll's House Part Two.
Oh,
What is it, Lucas Nath, I
yeah.
believe is the
Hmm.
name of the. Oh my God, it's so good. Oh my God, it is
Hmm.
so, 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 so good. So he assigned me that play, and my scene partner and I, the way John structures his class, basically you're just assigned a play with your group, be it one other actor or two or three other actors or whatever. And however much or little of the play you choose among your group to present is what you do.
Hmm.
So, which is great. And he
Yeah.
tends to assign plays. He tends to assign two-handers or sometimes three-handers. Just
Hmm.
like very small casts, so that you know
You get your
you have
time.
the freedom
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that magnificent, magnificent speech at the end as she's leaving. I just I wanted to I wanted to know whether the vocal choices that I had made at certain moments in that speech were coming through.
Hmm.
And so I set my phone up in the back of the theater that we held class in, and I recorded it and
Hmm.
and listened to it. And and that was just for a class.
Hmm.
I that's a tool that I've used for a very, very long time. And you know, one of my first voice when I was at Santa Rosa Junior College, where they had that really great music program,
Hmm.
my voice teacher then, Curtis Springer, RIP, we had a structure where
Hmm.
we would be assigned a song that we would learn over the course of a few weeks. And then for the last class meeting, we would have a recital day and we'd get dressed up
Hmm.
and he would videotape us. And then we had to go and watch ourselves and critique ourselves.
Hmm.
And so I learned a lot from that. I gained so much because you never hear yourself, you never see
Yeah.
yourself, the way others do, and the way what you're actually doing is not always reading the way you think it is. So I have always found that to be a tool that I come back to again and again. If I'm ever not sure, or even just sometimes if I'm just curious.
Yeah.
One time I recently went to an audition and just it was in so the Actors Equity office here in Los Angeles is the deadest space ever. Like it is so fucking dead. I feel anytime I go
Hmm.
there, I feel like I'm speaking or singing into a closet. It's just
Yeah.
like so fucking dead. And so I was just curious. And so
Yeah.
I brought my phone in and it was in my bag, and I recorded my audition because I just wanted to see like am I being heard? Like, what's the
Yeah.
balance between me and the piano? Like, I just wanted to know like what is being received on the other side.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, I definitely do that still, and I don't know. I just try to. There's definitely an expectation in opera that like you're gonna do a lot of work before you show up. So
Hmm.
I always try to just do a lot of work before I show up.
Yeah, I mean, it helps a lot. Well, and also something to that too is like I think I think about with like self tapes because like recent like just yesterday I filmed a TV audition and
Congratulations.
thank you, but like um it's really interesting when you rewatch yourself tapes to make sure that's the tape and yeah you have those moments where you actually do have to put your director's hat on
Hmm.
and just like and get away from your bullshit because you're just kind of like well these moments where I really thought I was engaged in listening and I was engaged in listening for some reason the camera isn't catching that,
Mm,
so what can I
sure.
do to not only be engaged but make sure I'm in communication with the camera so then
Mm,
it's
sure.
catching what's going on with my inner monologue.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Mm,
odd how like just some even just like sometimes we have such an aversion to talk about some of the technical refinement that's necessary, but it's just like but it needs to be there. It needs to be there. The lens is a tool. The mics are a tool. Like the speakers are a tool. Like all these things are tools that we need to understand in terms of just like what are we doing to really making sure that we're being received.
sure. Hmm. absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, and then for my own diction too.
Mm-hmm.
I listen
Yeah.
for diction to
Mm-hmm.
just be like, I just want it's super, super important to me that every single word of this section or what I mean, of course, we all want every word to be
Mm-hmm.
understood. But for that Doll's House Part Two speech, there were just a few lines that I wanted to make absolutely certain were crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made certain vocal choices and then I changed the choice
Mm-hmm.
according to what I heard,
Yeah.
because I'm like, okay, that's not quite coming across the way I intended it to. So let me make an adjustment. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah. And then I went home and I laid that speech down on self-tape and now it's in my deck. So like I just have it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
It's incredible. All right, so moving on. So let's get into the transition of finally getting into the theater. What motivated the choice to finding your way back into music theater?
So right. So I had well initially when I was in San Francisco and I'd gone there for opera, I had I kind of just wasn't really sure what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally because I could sing, there were musical opportunities for me,
Mm-hmm.
but I wanted to go back to theater. I wanted to go back to plays. And
Mm-hmm.
that is why I auditioned for the San Francisco Olympians Festival.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how I connected to Stewart and that
Mm-hmm.
whole, crew.
Yeah.
And it was through that it was the first audition that I had for them that Stewart cast me as Hera in the
Holy
reading
fuck.
of Juno. Yeah.
Your
So
like first like acting gig is this beefy role as the monarch.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
god.
yeah.
Wow.
And I was kind of blown away by it. I was just like, wow, okay, cool. Great.
Yeah, you're like, this is a sign.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the show got picked up, and Wiley
Mm-hmm.
West wanted to produce it. And so I kind of took that as a bit of a sign too. And that started me just going back to theater. And yes, I did some musicals when I was
Mm-hmm.
in San Francisco as well. But I did a lot of just, non-musical theater roles as well. I just wanted to get back to because I really love acting.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, of course I love singing. And I will
Mm-hmm.
always love singing. And
Yeah.
it was the first thing that I did as a little kid, to anyone who would listen. When I would sing Don't Cry Out Loud into my hairbrush, for anyone literally who would listen.
Oh my god.
And I didn't know the words.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also sing the Flashdance song, What a
Mm-hmm.
Feeling.
Yeah.
And there's that line, take your passion and make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And as a little girl, I thought that line was take your pants off and make it happen. And so I would sing, take your pants off, da-da-da-da, and
Oh my
make it
god.
happen. And my parents thought it was hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
So they never told me. I think I was like 17 years old, but when I finally learned what the line to that song was. But anyway, I digress. So yes,
Mm-hmm.
singing was my first love. Singing will always be a love.
Mm-hmm.
But I love, 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 love acting, and I don't need to sing to act. And
Nope.
I, so anyway, so I'm very grateful to Stuart for giving me that opportunity because it did really make me feel like, all right, this
Mm-hmm.
is something I can do, and
Yeah.
and I love it. I really, really love it. It
Yeah.
feeds me in a different way.
Yeah. And that was that something that also because I do feel like also Marigolds over at Custom Made was like one of your first early like acting roles. So, I mean, was that also like
Hmm.
a situation too where you're just kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of like finding my voice in a sense in terms of just like as an actor.
Yeah, I wanted to audition for all kinds of different things and just see what it was kind of like throwing spaghetti at that point. You
Mhm.
know, I wanted
Yeah.
to audition for a lot of different types of opportunities. And really that the Marigolds was about Katya. I really
Mhm.
wanted to work with Katya Rivera,
She's wonderful.
and
She's wonderful.
she's fantastic. So I really wanted to
Mhm.
work with her. And I remember being a little, unsure about that role for me. And
Mhm.
Brian Katz was definitely unsure about that role for me.
Mhm.
Brian Katz just very much had an idea in his head of
Mhm.
what Beatrice was supposed to look like, and I was
Yeah.
not it.
Mhm.
So Katya had to really fight for me because
Mhm.
she really wanted to work with me on it,
Mhm.
and Brian just had a like I remember walking into my callback, and it was me and all of these like considerably older women,
Mhm.
considerably older, like
Mhm.
20 years older than me at
Mhm.
least.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, Beatrice doesn't have to be this old. She has two teenage daughters, a 15 and a 17-year-old. She doesn't have to be this
Mm.
old,
Yeah,
you
like my
know?
my mom wasn't even 40 when like I was a teenager.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, why do you have a bunch of 60-year-olds in this room?
Mhm.
50, 60-year-olds. Um, but yeah, he just had it in his head that Beatrice needed to be older and matronly and not at all attractive. And so
Mm.
so Katya had to fight for me.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to her, I'm glad, and it's really, as we're having this conversation, I'm realizing one thing that's really great is I'm still in touch with all these people,
Yeah.
all these wonderful people that I'm talking about, and who have influenced me throughout,
Mhm.
my career. I'm still into the ones who are still with us. I'm
Yeah.
still in touch with all of them, you know, and
Yeah.
and so it's really great. Stick around this business long enough, and it's all the same people.
Oh, completely. And like so many things will come full circles in ways that you can't even comprehend.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So one that I do want to ask you about as I get
Hmm.
into my James Lipton voice, because
Yes.
this is the role that got you one of your first awards as an actor when you played the beggar woman in Sweeney Todd.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that was really a dream
Mm-hmm.
to get to do that show. As I mentioned, it's the first musical I ever saw, and
Mm-hmm.
my beloved late uncle took me to see it when I was 9 years old. My mother about killed him. And it really,
As you
it,
come
it,
home
it
with fake blood on your face.
totally. She's like, what? And I'm like, the demon over a fleet street. She's like, what? So yeah, and then I was just obsessed. My uncle had the LP
Mm-hmm.
of Sweeney, and I would just listen to it over
Mm-hmm.
and over and over again. And my mom was just like, turn that off. She hated it. Yeah, so that was exciting to be able
Mm-hmm.
to do that role and to do that show.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it won me
Mm-hmm.
some recognition, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the same company had me back to do the witch, my first turn as the witch in Into the Woods,
Mm-hmm.
Ray of Light. They're still kicking.
Yeah. Awesome.
They're still kicking, Ray of Light. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What kind of place in your heart does Sondheim hold for you? Because I feel like you've done a bit of you've
Mm.
done a good handful of them.
Sondheim and Kurt Weill have a lot of similarities. So there's certainly a there's certainly a harmonic and rhythmic sophistication that both of these composers have that I that just really jives with me and my musicality and
Mm-hmm.
my sense of what musical storytelling is. They both
Mm-hmm.
approached their songs, both Kurt Weill and Sondheim spoke in different ways about how they always allowed the subject matter to dictate the form. So, in other words,
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't just write a pretty melody and then attach words to it. They would
Mm-hmm.
decide, they would either have the words in the case of somebody whose lyrics they were setting, or if it, if it was their own, they would structure the song around what the story was that was being told.
Hmm.
So content dictates form, and I've always found that to be there's something about that for me makes
Hmm.
hooks me into a song more.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some similarities between those two composers in terms of like style and the type of singing that's
Mm.
required of them
Mm.
of their music. And Sondheim is just
Mm.
friggin' awesome.
Oh yeah. Well, and that also just feels like a more organic approach to going by it. It's like if this story is like emanating of a very particular way that it should go in terms of its form. I mean, like that. I mean, that feels like just a better way to kind of go about it in a sense.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me.
Hmm.
And I mean, does it have to be that way, like 100% all the time? No,
Hmm.
not necessarily. But I do think that there's something to it.
Hmm.
And I think it makes for better musical compositions in terms of like songs and storytelling.
Hmm. Gotcha. And so for another one I want to ask you about is the one that you got the Jeff for, because I actually didn't get a chance to see this one because I think I might have been
Oh,
in grad
yeah.
school at this point. So like
Yeah,
my
yeah. Hmm.
my life was just like all over the place.
Yeah, yeah,
So for the Grand Hotel, I don't know this show at all. I know dick about it. Tell
yeah,
me about this
yeah.
show. Tell me about the role, and just tell me about like the process of doing it.
So that was a funny situation because I submitted myself for a different role.
Hmm.
There's the character of Grushinskaya is a Russian-born prima ballerina who, at the time, which was a thing that was pretty common at the time, was sent to train in Paris as a
Mm-hmm.
young girl. So she was Russian-born, but she was a Parisian, basically. So
Mm-hmm.
it confused a lot of people when I showed up to the first day of rehearsal and I had a French accent. They're just like, are you trying to do? In fact, even our dialect coach, who clearly had not read the script, um, uh, Eva Brent, what's her name? Eva Brennan or whatever her name
Oh
is.
yeah, she
She
was my
works all the
voice coach
time.
at DePaul. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, she's great. She's
Yeah.
great. But she clearly showed up having not read the script.
Oh man.
So she was just like, yeah, are you, so you
Interesting.
have a very good French accent. Is that what you're going for? And I'm like, yes, because Grushinskaya was raised in Paris. So yes. Yes, that's what I'm going for.
Oh
Thanks.
man.
So so anyway, it was so I had submitted for a different role, and then they called me in for Grushinskaya. And here's the funny thing about that. I don't dance ballet,
Hmm.
like I had taken like one ballet class in my entire life as an
Hmm.
adult, again, I was not raised with the arts. I was not raised
Hmm.
with theater and music and dance classes and violin lessons at age 4 or piano lessons at age
Hmm.
7. That was not my life.
Yeah.
So I did not, and I remember Brenda Didier at one point, she was just like, she's working with me on this, and she's like this is all stuff that you learned when you're 5 years old. And I'm like, Brenda, you learned it when you were 5 years old. Bless you. My parents did not put me in ballet. I'm sorry. This is what I'm working with. Okay. And so Brenda and I ended up being
I
fine.
mean,
She's great. We're
I mean,
we're
we'll
wonderful.
save on the classism of that statement. We'll just brush over that real quick.
Yeah, it was a very classist thing to say to me. Yes,
Holy
absolutely.
fuck!
But this is what she was like, but this is we all learn in ballet when we're 5. That's what she said. And I'm
What
like,
school did you go to? I would very much like to know.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Cool, cool, cool. Great, great, great. Well, not all of us, not all
Hmm.
of us,
Hmm.
as it turns out.
Yep.
So she definitely did not get the Grushinskaya that she
Hmm.
wanted, but she got me.
Hmm.
And I again, I started because in Chicago, they tend to cast everything way, way, way in advance.
Oh yeah.
By the way, it's
Yeah.
totally not that way here in LA.
Oh shit!
They
Really?
cast shit and they start rehearsing like the next week. It's wild.
Oh, I hate
It's
that. Oh,
it's
I hate
it's
that.
wild. I know it's really crazy. It's really crazy. No, I prefer to
Oh
know what I'm
God.
doing.
Okay.
I prefer
It's
to have my
yeah, I'm
year
sorry.
booked out, you know?
Yeah, that's something that's different when you're doing Chicago Fire and it's one fucking line. Like not for Winter's Tale. Oh my
Right,
God.
right, right. It's crazy. It's really crazy.
Holy God.
So, so because I had such a runway with Grand Hotel, I was able to get in. I was in a group ballet class for 6 months before rehearsals began. And then once I had my choreography, I worked with my ballet instructor one on one. And
Mm-hmm.
she coached me on my specific choreography one on one because Brenda did not
Mm-hmm.
have the patience for me. So I was just kind of like, fine, fine, I'll do this. I'll do this on my own, you
Oh
know?
man.
And so yeah, I ended up with a role that I never intended to have. I was shocked. And Aaron Benham was the music director on that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just this crazy show. It's set in the 30s. It's this crazy show that's like the Grand Hotel is like this hotel in Berlin that a lot of like random artists from all over the place end up. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's this kind of slice of life of all these different characters who end up in this hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And so Grushinskaya ends up meeting this much, much, much younger man who turns out to be a con artist, but
Mm-hmm.
he really does love Grushinskaya. And they have this affair, and it's really, really beautiful. It's like this, they had those some really beautiful scenes that they had
Mm-hmm.
together. And one of my favorites was he asks her how how old she is, and she was just like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm not telling you my age. And she's like, well, how old are you? And he's like, well, I'm 26 years and 26 months.
Mm-hmm.
And the original line for Grushinskaya was, I'm 56 years and 56 months. But we
Mm-hmm.
changed it from me to 40. So I was like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
46 years and 46 months. So anyway, it was just really sweet. Like it was a really sweet role, and very, very challenging, and a very rewarding experience. And I met some really wonderful people who are still Liz Norton, who was also at the wedding. A tall,
Yeah.
statuesque, short white hair, older
Oh yes, yes,
woman.
yes, 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 yes. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
she ended up playing the role that I had initially thought of for myself. I had not pictured Rafaela as an older woman. I had pictured her younger.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had originally submitted myself for her role, and they didn't even have me read for her role. They're like, no, we want you to do Gru. And I'm like, okay. So that was a very unexpected, wonderful chapter. And winning the Jeff, that I did not think in a million years that was going to happen. Especially, I was thrilled to get the nomination. I was like, huh, really cool. I was thrilled
Mm-hmm.
to get the nomination, but then once I saw my category and saw who else was in my category with me, I was like, there's no way in hell I'm winning this award. No way in hell.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally had not prepared a speech because I was that certain that there was no way I was getting that award.
Damn.
And then I did. And I got it with Jonathan, who was also in the show,
Mm-hmm.
who was seated right next to me at the awards. And so I was sitting in between Martin to my right and Jonathan Schwartz to my left. And they announced it, and I was frozen. I had that moment. I was like completely and totally frozen. And
Yeah.
Jonathan's like, Michelle, come on. And
Oh no.
Martin's like, Michelle, go.
Oh no. You're like Emma Stone winning for Poor Things, and you're like.
Yeah, seriously. I was like, sure, I was just like Emma Stone. we're so much, we're so much alike.
I see all the similarities.
Uh, I know, it was awesome. It was so great. It led to a lot of great opportunities for
Mhm.
me. And I'm very, very grateful um that happened. I'll tell you what, I am grateful to Brenda Didier for
Mhm.
having no faith in my ability to do the role because she made me work harder. She did.
Uh,
She made it very clear. Okay.
yeah. Well,
Brenda, if you're watching, you were not subtle.
what?
I don't tell her this to her face. I don't care.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh man. Well, but there's also something to be said about the fact that like out of a lot of the shows that you've done, this really feels so much more out of your comfort zone than most shows I've discussed with you.
uh, Grand Hotel.
Yeah.
Oh my God, absolutely. Absolutely. It was very, very, it was very, I mean, I guess the only thing about, I mean, Gru was, her character was not unlike some characters that I have played,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of just, she was just like this very fiercely independent woman. And I got a lot of really great one-liners, you know, she
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of really great sassy one-liners. So character-wise, it wasn't that much of a stretch, but the ballet thing was a stretch. And yeah, and the choreography part was that was the big challenge for sure. But the
Mm-hmm.
dialect, I love to do French,
Yeah.
so that was really fun and delicious. I thoroughly enjoyed that. The actual production was kind of wild because we were there, we were at Theater Wit, and
Mm-hmm.
the space that we were in, it was the main one, right? Yeah, we were at the main stage, but that had a
Mm-hmm.
very, very tiny backstage area, and there wasn't enough room
Yeah.
backstage for us to all be seated.
I was
Like we didn't,
told that all three stages share the same fucking bathroom in that space.
yes, 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 yes. Yeah, I mean, there was
It's so
another like kind of
fun.
hidden bathroom, but like it was,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, basically you had to know where it was, and like you couldn't like really go there during a show, and yeah, it was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And I had a really, really crazy quick change
Mm-hmm.
where I had to get essentially naked, and I had, both the actor playing my lover and
Mm-hmm.
our dance captain Hannah, who was amazing,
Mm-hmm.
um, both helped me. We had a whole choreographed
Mm-hmm.
like situation to get me changed, but there was no room and no time for any modesty of any sort whatsoever. I basically had to strip naked backstage
Oh my
in a
god.
situation where people were packed like sardines. It was very uncomfortable.
Oh my
But there
god,
was
that is
there was
wild.
there was nothing I could do. There was absolutely nothing that I could do. So
Oof. Oh man. The yeah, Chicago, there is nothing stranger sometimes in a Chicago theater backstage. Just because
mm,
it's just like you see all this beautiful work being done up front, and it's just like you have no idea of sometimes the sewers that you have to like occupy as you wait to go in there.
that is, I feel like Grand Hotel was the epitome of that because the show itself was all about grandeur and elegance. And, the hotel itself was supposed to be like this crazy, elegant, extravagant hotel. And I mean, they did the best they could with the set, you know.
Yeah.
It was mainly in our costumes. Our
Hmm.
costume designer also won a Jeff for um
Hmm.
for that show, John Nasca, who's fantastic costumer.
Hmm.
So really that was kind of where the opulence was in
Hmm.
our costumes. I had the best costumes. Oh my
Hmm.
God. Oh my God. I had the best costumes.
Yeah.
They put me in furs and like, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, she was a diva,
Yeah. It was
diva.
just it was peak Michelle decadence
Yeah,
all
it
on stage.
was for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
So another show that I was curious about because I had this conversation a little bit with Amy a couple of weeks ago. So when you did American Mariachi,
Mm-hmm.
That was, I think that probably was the first show where it was like you were doing it with an all Mexican cast. And something that I
Yeah.
was talking about with Amy is just like there is something different
Oh my
about
God, yes.
when you are, ethnically you're Latino, and you finally get into a room when it's all of you, because like for us sometimes we don't even think about it because we're kind of conditioned to believe that a lot of this work just kind of isn't out there until you realize, oh, it is here. And then
Mm-hmm.
so there is
Mm-hmm.
something too, like when you get to do a show that has more a cultural like closeness to you, where it's just like it feels like you're coming back home.
Mm, mm,
And I'm just kind
yeah.
of curious about you, about like having that kind of experience, getting a chance to do
Well,
that with
that
Theater Squared.
was, yeah, yeah. So that was a really, really special production. And it was my debut at Theater Squared, which my husband Martin had designed a couple of sets for them previous.
Mm-hmm.
So he worked at Theater Squared before I did.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was really great. I had just gotten back from Puerto Rico, and like it was, which was like my first trip after the pandemic. And it was, well, the pandemic technically was not over at that time, but Puerto Rico had a lot of really
Yeah.
wonderful safety precautions in place. So
Mm-hmm.
I felt safe going. And and yeah, it was to be clear, it wasn't an all Mexican cast, but it was an all Latina cast.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had a really wonderful thing that we did. We circled up before every single show, and we would, we had a certain little thing that we did, and then at the very, very end,
Mm-hmm.
we would put our hands in the middle, like a sports team,
Yeah.
and all say our country, like
Oh.
the so we had Puerto Rico, Chile, Argentina, Brazil, um, Mexico, of course. And was that it? Yeah, yeah, that was it. And it was just really, it was super awesome, and I made some for sure lifelong friends, including my dear friend Chris Hecky. He was the Brazilian, the one with the hot,
Mm.
he was at the wedding with the hot pink pants and the super
Yes.
floral shirt.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. I remember
yeah.
that.
That's Chris Hecky. Yeah, he's wonderful. He's in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of my dear, dear, dear friends. And I've
Mm-hmm.
kept in touch with many people from that cast. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a cast of superstars. Belén Majano, our Argentine component, she went straight from our production of Mariachi to start rehearsal for the tour of Hadestown, which she did for 2 years. And then just recently, a
Oh my
few months
God.
ago, she transferred to Broadway. So,
That's fucking awesome. That's fucking
yeah,
awesome. And man, that
yeah.
that Hadestown soundtrack is
Oh, it's
something
so
else.
good. Oh, it's
Like,
so good.
well, because it's like I've never heard like a Broadway soundtrack and be like, wow, this is so New Orleans. Holy fuck. Like it's
Hmm.
remarkable.
It's so good. Yeah, it's such a great, great, great show. That's an example of a newer musical that I like.
Yes. Oh man.
I
So,
don't like a lot of newer musicals, but I love Hadestown.
oh yeah, it's stunning. And
Yeah,
also what an interesting story.
it's
Like
so
coming up with it in
great.
terms of like the crowdfunding and all that other stuff. It was just so unique in every way in its approach and stylistically.
For sure. Have you seen it? Have you seen a production of it?
I have only listened to the soundtrack, but
If you get the
even yeah.
opportunity to see it, you should. You
Oh,
should see it.
I
You
will.
got you got to see it on stage. It's the set is amazing.
Oh,
It's really good. It's really, really good.
oh, trust me, I really want to, because like even the soundtrack itself is so engrossing. Like it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
like it's unlike any other music theater experience that like I've heard. Like yeah.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
going back to LA. This was one that I was really curious about because I feel like you have had such a mixed and complex relationship with the city. Like
Mm,
growing up there and then leaving because I think what I remember you telling me before was that when you were going there for opera, where I think someone told you that said you're not going to have a career here or something like that, or something to that degree, or like the roles that you want just aren't here for like opera and things of that sort. I think you told me that a long time ago. Um,
Close,
yeah,
close. What had happened specifically was when I
yeah,
was here after completing my formal education,
yeah.
I came back here and thought I might try to
Hmm.
be here again. And I was here for a couple years,
Yeah.
and I was auditioning,
Hmm.
and I was going through this thing where I was auditioning and getting called back and not getting hired,
Hmm.
and it was happening again and again and again. If I knew now what I knew then,
Hmm.
I might have stuck it out
Yeah.
a little bit longer
Yeah.
because it hadn't really been that long
Yeah.
that I was auditioning and getting called back. And I now know that if you're getting called back again and again and again by the same people, it means they like you.
Hmm.
And it
Yeah.
means it's just a matter of time before you get
Yeah.
booked. I know that
Hmm.
now. I didn't know that then.
Hmm.
So I took me getting called back and then not booking, called back and then not booking over and over again. I
Hmm.
saw that as a sign that that something was wrong.
Okay.
And a friend of mine at the time, who was at the time uh, a choreographer at Disneyland,
Hmm.
and what she said to me, and it was the right thing for me to hear at that moment.
Yeah.
It resonated with me. What she said was, if that's happening to you, then you are in the wrong market for your talent,
Got it.
and you should just go somewhere else.
Hmm.
That's what she said. And so
Got
I
it.
went, makes sense. Great. See ya. And so then I went to San Francisco. And then also I just had an opportunity,
Hmm.
an old roommate of mine in Eugene, Oregon, someone I'd kept in touch with, someone who was also at the
Hmm.
wedding.
Yeah.
She was living in Oakland at the time, and I had posted something on Facebook,
Hmm.
something about like being miserable in LA or
Hmm.
something of that
Yeah.
nature. And so she reached out to me and she's just like, "Hey, Michelle, I know you've been there for a while, and I know that you have a complicated relationship with Los Angeles, and I know that you love the Bay Area. So I'm just letting you know that a room is coming open in my house in Oakland.
Hmm.
Here are the terms, here's the rent, here's the blah blah blah, here's where we are.
Yeah.
Just saying." And I was just like, "Yes."
Hmm.
I'd be like, "Yes." Like, when do you need me? I'm on my
Hmm.
way, basically.
Yeah.
I was just like, hell yeah. So so yeah, so it's been interesting. And then of course that started, I was in the Bay Area for 7 years, and then I was in Chicago for 7 years. So
Yeah.
I've been gone for 14 years. And
Yeah.
it's been really interesting being back. It's been in some ways really, really great. I definitely do have a very complicated relationship with my family. So
Yeah.
that has not changed. It's still very complicated.
Hmm.
But career wise, it took a while because when we first got here, we were pretty heavily, well, when we first moved here, my hair was fire engine red, if you recall.
Yep.
I had
And you're
a
going
I
through so many
had
colors. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just went through every color of the rainbow, and I was just experimenting with my hair because I lost my mind during the pandemic, chopped off all my hair into a short pixie, and then bleached it. And then went through the entire fantasy hair color wheel, which was super fun, but it almost completely halted my auditions.
Hmm.
So um, it did for TV film, at least, for sure. Any on-camera stuff, complete halt.
Yeah.
Theater, I ended up getting a bunch of interesting, different auditions that I'd never
Hmm.
gotten before,
Like
which
what?
Like Allison in Fun Home. I
Interesting.
Yeah, I had been called in, called
Interesting.
back multiple times for Helen, the mom role in Fun Home, but I got called for Allison and called back for Allison.
I
And
fucking
then
love that
another one.
show.
I know,
Oh,
right? And then another one, a show that I've been circling for years, that for fuck's sake, will somebody hire me already, is In the Heights. And I had always been called and called
how?
back. I
How
know,
have you not
you
done
know,
it?
I've I've auditioned for this show fucking six times,
That's
Shane. Like, it's my white
outrageous.
whale. It's my
Like,
white whale.
like at the bare minimum, like being the woman who runs the salon. That's just like glove in hand. Come on.
So that is hilarious because I had only ever been called for Daniela, the mom. Sorry,
Hmm.
sorry, not Daniela, Camilla,
Hmm.
the mom role in the Heights. And, never got, I came really close once in Chicago, but I never got it. I'd
Hmm.
never been called in for Daniela,
Hmm.
the friggin' salon owner. That's
Yeah,
my role. But it wasn't until my hair was short and green and stuck up like this
that's
that
crazy.
somebody finally called me in for Daniela. And now that's the only role I get called in for.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, you doing the song where you get to like just shit talk and just like talk about all the rumors for everyone. I mean, come on, you would like. I think you would like have the audience on the floor doing that fucking routine.
well, I love like Carnaval del Barrio is one of my main
Yes.
audition numbers for anything Latine. It's
It's
on my singing reel,
yeah.
that's on my Actors Access. Yeah.
I mean, just the introduction, just the slow pop, pop, pop. It's just like the build on it is gorgeous.
Yeah, it's so awesome. It's a great, and it's a
Yeah.
really perfect audition piece because it's,
Mm-hmm.
her solo part in the beginning is relatively short, and then it becomes, of course, an ensemble number. So it's really great for auditions in terms of length. But anyway, yeah. So we first got here. My hair was fantasy colors. We were,
Wedding.
planning a wedding,
Mm-hmm.
that we executed entirely ourselves, like we had so many wonderful friends help us, of course, but like in terms of
Mm-hmm.
the planning of it and everything, and in terms of the finances, we
Mm-hmm.
paid for everything ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to financially recover from the move, and then all of our resources were for the wedding, and then all of our resources were for our honeymoon. So I was booked out for many months at a time there. And also my hair was all these crazy colors. So then once I finally, came
Yeah.
back to normal hair color, then I booked the show that I did here last
Mm-hmm.
year. And that's how everything happened. My now manager, Jane Henriksen, came to opening night of the show that I did last year,
Mm-hmm.
and asked me to lunch, and then decided to sign me. And then she is who got me a meeting with Hugh Leon at Coast
Mm-hmm.
to Coast,
Yeah.
which is a really, really great mid-tier agency here.
Mm-hmm.
And he decided to sign me.
Mm-hmm.
And around that time too is when I decided to reach back out to Kyle over at Big Mouth,
Mm-hmm.
whom I always loved. I
Yeah.
always loved Kyle. And so, and he had always kind of left that door open, when
Yeah.
I decided to move away from Big Mouth and go to DDO in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
He had told me, he's like, "Hey, Michelle, if you ever want to come back, like, we could just work together, just me and you." And so I was like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah.
great." So
Yeah. And that was
yeah,
the relationship you wanted anyway, you know?
exactly, exactly, right. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I finally feel like things are starting to,
Yeah.
pick up and happen, and it's good, and I'm super super excited for
Mm.
this work that I have for the next 6 months.
Oh my God. Yeah, to be booked and blessed for 6 months is beautiful.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's really really great. And it was funny because we took out all the stuff for my self tape for this
Mm-hmm.
commercial self tape that I had to submit a little bit ago here. And um it was just funny because I was like, oh yeah, I haven't had to, this,
Mm-hmm.
because there was a period of time there where the backdrop was just up because
Mm-hmm.
I had like self tape after self tape after self tape, so like I was able to fold it up
Yeah.
and put it away, which was
Yes.
nice. It just kind of set it down for a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Oh, absolutely. So big question that I wanted to ask you was, I think something that I've always admired about you was the how willing you are to walk away from things. I feel like you get like you become if you understand when something's not working, you can detach from it quickly and you're gone, which I think is actually great. I think it's a great tool to have, whether it's moving, whether it's like what getting away from a show. I always feel like you understand how to honor yourself. And I
mm,
feel like one of the biggest things that an actor truly needs to understand is how to honor themselves as people and as artists so they don't get fucked
mhm.
with.
Mm,
And me and you have had so many conversations over the years where it's like you like and I'm not going to ask you to give any stories because I don't want this to be like a shit talk fest. But I
mm.
think what I will say is like you've always been very attuned to smelling bullshit, to smelling things early and understanding how to not only protect yourself but to advocate for yourself. Um because like you're just not going to take shit. Even though you are diplomatic in the process. Um, so I'm kind of curious for you on like where that comes from, and also it's just like, was there any like moment in time where you were just kind of where you realized like, hey, like I need to understand how to set boundaries for myself to protect myself and to honor myself as a person as an actor.
Yeah, yeah, great question. It's really interesting because I could dive into a story right now that I'm going to just summarize. There was a recent article that came out about a certain theater producer
Hmm.
with whom I worked over 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And I contributed to this article off the record.
Okay.
And I read the article and I saw that an actor that I had worked with at my first turn as the witch, as Into the
Hmm.
Woods at Ray of Light Theater, an
Hmm.
actor that I had worked with and met in that production spoke on the record
Hmm.
in this article. So I reached out to him.
Hmm.
And it was funny because in our Facebook thread, it had been almost 10 years, almost to the day,
Hmm.
the last time I had communicated with this actor.
Hmm.
And so I just reached out to him and I was like, hey, read the article. I want to commend you for speaking on the record. I spoke off the record.
Hmm.
Sorry that you went through that. And he responded to me and he was like, Michelle, I owe you such a great a debt of gratitude. And I'm so glad you reached out to me. And he's like, you were the only one who warned me. And I didn't even remember this conversation until he said it.
Damn.
He was like, I remember that conversation clearly that we had walking back to the BART after a performance of Into the Woods. I told you about this booking that I had, and you warned me about working with this person, and you were the only person who did. And because you did, I was able to go into that situation with my antennae up and with my bullshit meter on like full alert. And the
Hmm.
moment that I sniffed out anything, I bailed. And
Hmm.
and he's like, I don't think that I would have been like so ready to do that had you not talked to me. And he's like,
Hmm.
so even though I decided to work with this person anyway, I was
Hmm.
able to get out of that situation before I experienced full on trauma,
Yeah.
as opposed to many of my colleagues.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I owe that largely to you. Shane, I don't even remember us having this conversation. I don't even remember us having it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't surprise me. I had that moment where I was just kind of like, good job, Michelle Hasso.
Yeah.
10 years ago, you were advocating for your fellow actors.
Yeah.
10 years ago, you were, spilling the tea, about
Hmm.
certain directors, producers, theater companies, whatever. And it just kind of made me realize I've sort of always been like that. So if when the time does ever come that I'm ready to hang up my performer hat, I think that I think that the next phase for me would be working for one of the unions,
Yeah.
working for Actors Equity or for SAG-AFTRA to work for actor advocacy. I've I have in my
Yeah.
music theater days, I'm often the senior cast member in music theater. It's
Mm.
just the way it typically is. Music
Mm.
theater tends to be a young person's game. And so there have been multiple casts that I've been in which I've kind of assumed a mama bear sort of a role.
Uh-huh.
And it just comes naturally to
Hmm.
me.
Yeah.
And there have been many young actors who have asked me for advice about agencies, about contracts, about whatever, or how to advocate for themselves. And empowering my fellow actor is something that I really, really, really enjoy. And it is really hard because we are conditioned and taught and have it drilled into us as actors again and again and again that we are replaceable, that we are expendable.
Yeah.
And like, you're so lucky to be doing what you do, blah blah blah. And yes, 100%, we are so lucky to do what we do.
Yeah.
And the numbers against us are crazy. Having been on the other side of the casting table a few times now, I am awestruck again and again by how much talent there is out there. There's a
Yeah.
crazy amount of incredible talent out there.
Even for
It's a
small
miracle that any of us work
projects.
ever.
Yeah. Even for
Even for
small
small
projects.
projects, it's crazy, especially if you're in a market like Chicago, or
Yeah.
one of the markets where there's a lot of talent.
Yeah. No, it's just been that weird
So
thing of like,
so yeah.
yeah. No, no, it's just that weird thing of like, having an agent now and all that other stuff and like auditioning for TV. I'm just like, I oddly haven't been discouraged that I haven't booked because I'm like, it's a fucking lottery. It's a
Oh my
fucking
God,
lottery sometimes.
it
Like,
is.
it's just like,
No,
how
it
many people am I
is.
competing for within my own agency? And
Mm-hmm,
then consider the 15 other agencies and then the out of market.
mm-hmm,
It's just like,
mm-hmm,
count your blessings if you get it. But yeah, but
mm-hmm,
yet at the same time too, it's like something that I feel like I've been talking to people for quite a while is how to truly get over depravity mindset.
mm-hmm,
And because it will kill us. And
mm-hmm,
also, like, the thing that I try to talk to some people about is like, you have to protect your joy in this space
mm-hmm. Yes,
because
because
we have, yeah.
yeah, there a few years now. Did you ever cross paths with Sherry Scott? She's a director. She's head of the acting program at Notre Dame,
I have not, no.
and she worked with the Irish Theater Company there in Chicago for a while. Anyway,
Mm,
um, she I can't even remember how we crossed paths, but she had reached out to me to speak on that book, Stanislavski and Race,
mm-hmm,
to do that interview for that publication that she edited, which is now published. So I am now
mm.
published, which is
Oh.
kind of fun. My name is in a publication, so that's cool. And for the last few years now, she has had me do a self-tape workshop for her students there at
Mm-hmm,
Notre Dame. And one thing that I've always said to them, because we always open it up to questions at the end, and these
mm-hmm,
these these are all undergrads, and they don't know what they don't know.
mm-mm.
And so I always just kind of say, hey, just listen, you have to take care of yourself in this business, because this is an industry that is not going to look out for you. This is an industry that is not going to check in with you and be like, hey, do you need a break? Do you need a vacation? Is it vacation time? Like, is it time for you to just kind of like step back and find your joy somewhere else for a little while? I mean,
Yeah.
I've stepped back from this career and stepped back into it many, many times,
Mm-hmm.
because you just get burned out
Yeah.
sometimes, and the burnout is real. And the bottom line is, we as actors are telling stories. That's what we're doing. We're professional storytellers, and part of what's going to enrich us as storytellers is to make our own stories, right? So have those
Mm-hmm.
experiences, travel,
Yeah.
like you nurture your relationships. I went through so many years where I missed so many weddings, funerals, graduations, so much. I missed so much joy
Yeah.
because I was like, no, the show, the show, the show, the show, like, I gotta,
Yeah.
when I was going, and that was at its peak when I was in San Francisco, really. It was just one show after another, after another, after another. There was never a break.
Yeah.
So I missed a lot during that time. And I decided a little while ago, I'm not going to do that anymore. Like, I am
Mm-mm.
making time for those breaks, even with the Will Gear. I'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
what, there are a couple of hiatus weeks,
Mm-hmm.
right, within the schedule. And there's one period where there's a hiatus week for Winter's Tale. And then there's a little bit of overlap with Tartuffe. And there's
Mm-hmm.
one matinee in September that if I get that matinee covered, I could have 2 weeks and Martin and I can get out of the country. Right.
Mhm.
And so I just asked, I was like, listen, this was not a pre-existing conflict that I gave you. But if there is any way that on September 22nd, it's so far in the distance of like if my Elmire understudy can take my Tartuffe matinee for me that day so that my husband and I can take a trip, I'd really appreciate it. And they're like, yeah, no problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's
Yeah.
September. Sure, we can make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes you just got to ask.
Yeah, no, for real, for real. No, oh, and even sometimes too. I remember like when I was preparing to like go to your wedding and like someone like I got in audition invites to do a show, and like their tech was just starting right around the time where I'd be out of town for the wedding, and I was just like, hey, look, so I'll be out of town for those dates. It's like, cause like before I'd be like, oh my god, do I be flexible? But let's for me, I'm just like, no, I'm going to a wedding. They can
Yeah,
accommodate or they can't. And
right.
like and like they emailed me and then said that it wouldn't work, and I'm like, okay. Because yeah,
Yeah,
like I'm having my moments too. I'm like, yeah, no, I gotta live my fucking life.
right,
And if this show can fit within my life, fantastic. But like,
right.
yeah, like you mentioned before, it's just like those experiences will enrich us as actors, and like sometimes that is what we need to do. So let's leave it at this because we're coming up in 2 hours. But
Ah!
yeah,
I'm not
which
surprised.
yeah, yeah,
I'm not
not
surprised.
surprised, not surprised at all, not surprised at all. So, in terms of taking care of yourself, like let's say we got the 23-year-old actor. They're finding themselves in one of their like they're one of their first shows, but they're finding themselves a little compromised by the show because of the way they're telling the story or because of how they're being treated. But they're in that, how 23-year-olds get like recent grads where they're like, I don't know, like I'm just making connections.
Mhm,
What do you
mhm,
say to that person who wants to speak but feels trapped by the fact that they don't know anybody and so they really have
mm.
no protection?
That's so hard
Yeah.
because it's so easy for me to say, you got to look out for yourself. You got to,
Yes.
it's
Mm-hmm.
so easy for me to say these
Mm-hmm.
things, but in that situation, I remember being there. I remember being there
Mm-hmm.
like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And I know that especially when you're first starting out, you really think here's one thing that I'll say. At that stage, especially when you're first starting out, you're excited, you're hungry, you're ready to go, you're like
Mm-hmm.
ready to get this going. um, that we do have a little more of a tendency, I feel, to think this might be the thing that leads to the next thing, that leads to the next thing, that leads to
Mm-hmm.
the thing.
Yeah.
We have this idea that like every
You think
single
it's here.
opportunity is so
Mm-hmm.
precious,
Yeah.
because it's gonna lead to, and the fact of the matter is there are endless paths,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if a show is clipping your wings, if a situation is clipping your wings in whatever way, if you are not feeling valued, if you are not feeling heard, if you are not feeling safe, there are so many shows. Like that's the thing, is just like there is so much else that you can do. And acting isn't just one thing either. You can step away from theater for a little while and invest in voiceover, or
Mm-hmm.
take an improv class, take a playwriting workshop, create your own content, like there's
Mm-hmm.
so many things that we can do artistically. And
Mm-hmm.
and theater is one of those things that theater will take everything from you if you let it. And also, there's plenty of it. So walk away from that
Mm-hmm.
fucking show. And again, I know that it's so much easier said than done, but just know that like no matter how certain people, like this person who has just been outed in the San Francisco Bay Area, that no matter how certain people will make you feel, or like what's his face from fucking Profiles in Chicago, these are examples
Mm-hmm.
of people who will feed on that mindset that you're replaceable, that this is a great opportunity for you, that you are going to be blacklisted if you dare walk away from this, et cetera, et cetera. There are people who feed on that insecurity. And
Mm-hmm.
for every one of those that there are out there, there are 10 wonderful, amazing director, producer companies that will lift you up and that
Mm-hmm.
will provide a safe space for you to fly. and do the work that you're supposed to be doing. And that's truly going to enrich you. So just know, like, no matter what somebody says to you, if it doesn't feel
Mm-hmm.
right, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's if listen to that gut. Listen to that
Mm-hmm.
gut because that's that inner voice. I'm getting emotional just thinking about this. That inner voice is going to be what keeps you in the game. And this is a long game. The acting game is a long game. And what's going to keep you going is that inner voice.
Oh my God. Gave me chills.
I
Michelle, I fucking love you so much. And
love you too,
and
Shane.
yeah, I'm so glad we got to talk. And yeah, for anyone who watches this, I hope you're able to get so many good nuggets out of this. And yeah, let's call it here. Have a good night, everyone. Bye. Mwah.
Mwah.